Crunchyroll.com is a streaming service-based website that primarily plays host to several different anime that you can pay to watch. But much like print media, I believe it to be both antiquated and borderline obsolete. In Unique Namosaurus' video entitled You Should Pirate Anime, he demonstrates that Crunchyroll provides a worse service than competing sites like Kiss Anime, which allows you to stream anime free of charge. These issues have also been outlined by a few other AniTubers in the past, but are usually glossed over because a large portion of them are benefiting directly off of Crunchyroll's paid promotions and affiliate links. On the odd occasion that this issue is addressed, the main argument brought up is that people want to support the anime industry, and so are willing to pay for Crunchyroll services. This sentiment of paying in part for products or services, and in part to help support the industry that revolves around said products or services, is one that I find to be both noble and favorable. Though, in the case of Crunchyroll, I believe there are some serious misconceptions that need clearing up. To do so, I pose the question, is Crunchyroll really helping the anime industry? Or is this just a talking point used to enable the uneducated spending habits of the blissfully ignorant? Well, allow me to show you just how much of your $6.95, or $11.95 for you beta testers, goes towards the anime industry. In October of 2013, Crunchyroll CEO Kun Gao did an interview for an article published on otakujournalist.com in which he revealed that anime publishers are, quote, ecstatic about the revenue they receive and that publishers probably wouldn't agree to work with Crunchyroll in such large numbers if they were getting such a bad deal. The article goes on to explain that most of the money earned goes straight into the anime industry, and the percentage of your time spent watching an anime is equal to the percentage of money from your subscription fee that goes directly to that show's given publisher. Meaning, if you only watch one anime, that anime will get 100% of your subscription fee. After Crunchyroll has taken its cut, of course. After having read this article, I was almost completely on board in believing that this was truly an amazing service. But then, I looked into things a bit, and realized the majority of Crunchyroll shares were bought out by Otter Media. Otter Media, for those of you who aren't aware, is a subsidiary of the joint venture between AT&T and the Chernin Group. You've probably already heard of the colossal communications corporation known as AT&T, a major supplier of internet and phone service throughout America for some time now. But what you might not be aware of is AT&T's long rap sheet of illegal, money-grubbing behavior. Allow me to list out a few. In 2015, the corporation was fined $100 million for misleading customers. Also in 2015, they helped the US government spy on the internet usage of its citizens on a, quote, vast scale. Again in 2015, AT&T was fined $4 billion for misleading customers. In 2016, AT&T was fined for allowing scammers to bill customers for, quote, sham directory services. And on top of all that, they're currently under investigation for charging billions of dollars for broadband services that never showed up. And that's just what I found in about 5 minutes of parsing through the first few articles that showed up with a quick Google search. So before you start spouting off just how much Crunchyroll loves anime and how much good they're doing for the industry, remember, they're owned by a corporation that has a history of duplicitous and deceitful behavior. Having looked into the shady business dealings that AT&T is regularly involved in, I'd be surprised if the previously mentioned interview with Kun Gao wasn't set up before AT&T acquired Crunchyroll as part of a non-disclosure agreement. In doing so, AT&T could paint Crunchyroll in a positive light in order to look like the good guys while their heavy corporate hands hold down the anime industry and steal its lunch money behind the scenes. As of December 2nd, 2013, the Otter Media subsidiary gained ownership of 80% of Crunchyroll, meaning that it became the new controlling owner. And with new owners, bring new rules. But who owns that other 20%, you might be asking? None other than the TV Tokyo Corporation, who is responsible for distributing and broadcasting a ridiculous amount of anime all across Japan. Now, as a fan of anime, this might sound like a good thing, but think about it from a business perspective. Why would Otter Media want to allow TV Tokyo in on their action? The most logical reason would be to get to their connections. See, AT&T gains significantly from having access to TV Tokyo's broadcasting and viewer base. Let me ask you another question. If you were a big corporation and you wanted to make as much money as possible, how would you go about using your partnership with TV Tokyo to your advantage? How about forcing the studios to sign non-disclosure agreements and contracts that underpay them by threatening not to air their shows or to broadcast their shows in time slots with low viewership? Now, I've got a pretty good idea that most of you are probably morally opposed to the idea of crushing an industry just to eke out a little more profit. But then again, you're probably not a soulless corporate fiend looking to make as much money as possible for the shareholders salivating over the potential to earn a higher annual dividend. Then again, who's to say that their morals would hold up if they were looking at a bonus of tens of millions of dollars for reducing corporate expenditure? Hell, that much money might make a person forget what anime even is for a while. Fortunately, or unfortunately, depending on how you look at things, this is just a theory, and I can't prove any of it. See, Crunchyroll is a privately owned company and is therefore not required to publicly release their 10K filings. But don't worry, there is another reason why Crunchyroll is bad for the industry, and this reason doesn't require you to wear a tin hat to jump on board. Crunchyroll is bad for the anime industry because it removes the need for competition and promotes the creation of low-quality anime. It's no secret that there has been an influx of more and more bad anime coming out over the last few years. Digibro's video entitled "There is Too Much Anime" tackles the subject pretty well, at least until he started begging for sponsorships. In the video, Digi goes on to show how almost no one watches some of these shitty shows that have been coming out lately, and ribbed on one in particular called Two Car, a show that I decided to check out just to see how bad it really was. And let me tell you, I was stunned at the lack of animation. Almost nothing moved, aside from the slow panning shots and the mouths flapping. A quarter of the way into the first episode and it was still just slowly introducing sets of unimportant side characters. Once that was finally over, I was expecting to at least see some decent sakuga during the racing scenes, but once the race scene started, I was appalled to find out that it was nearly as static as the rest of the show had been up until that point. And on the odd occasion that there was some actual animation present, it was always janky and unnatural. Needless to say, I didn't make it all the way through the first episode, and I wasn't surprised to find out that the show had almost the same number of favorites on my anime list as there were staff members that worked on the show, despite having been checked out by over 10,000 people. After digging a bit deeper, I noticed that this was far from the only show that was being aired on Crunchyroll that was cheaply made and performed incredibly poorly. And that left me asking, why are low-quality, low-effort shows like these even made, and who's watching them? And more importantly, how could any studio in an industry that's supposed to be so harsh and brutal get away with making such an utter failure of a show? Well, the answer to that question is Crunchyroll. Crunchyroll is self-admittedly responsible for making licensing offers on, quote, every single title. Meaning that if a studio can mash together a glorified slideshow with sound effects using minimal staff, then they'll be able to turn around and make a nice little profit by selling their middle school quality art project over to Crunchyroll, who is in a position where they can afford to take a small loss in order to squash potential competitors by acquiring quantity over quality. Unfortunately for everyone, a side effect of this business practice promotes anime studios pumping out low-quality garbage that appeals to virtually no one, because it will always be a safer bet to make a guaranteed profit on a low-budget heap of trash than it will be to take a risk investing capital into a project that could flop and lose a ton of money. If you're wondering how Crunchyroll can afford to fund a bunch of terrible shows that lose them money season after season, well, that's where you, the consumer, comes into play. Every time that you pay Crunchyroll to get access to the few shows that are hyped up or that pique your interest during a given season, some of your subscription fee is going directly towards acquiring the rights to other shitty shows, which are siphoning money away from the shows you actually care about and want to watch. Theoretically, if this practice continues, more and more studios will turn to churning out cheap shows that turn a quick profit, thus watering down the pool of quality anime to choose from, and that is a problem for many reasons. Firstly, it makes anime as a medium less appealing to newer viewers who will likely come across an anime with an interesting premise that suffers from long panning shots, massive exposition dumps, plot holes, poorly fleshed out characters, or lackluster world building. All of which can stem from producing an underfunded, rushed product with minimal staff and oversight, and can lead newer anime viewers to believe that anime as a medium is generally not good, aside from a few select shows that are deemed by the masses to be classics or masterpieces. A common phrase that is applicable to the current state of anime is that the cream will rise to the top, and as the season goes on, you start to see which shows are worth watching based off of the popularity and ratings on sites like MyAnimeList. The problem is that there's so many new and returning anime coming out in a given season that it becomes harder and harder for professionals to give each show a fair shake when trying to figure out which ones stand out from the others. If the trend continues to skew towards studios pumping out more budget shows, there will slowly be less and less quality anime out there worth watching, some of which will inevitably end up drowning in a sea of its mediocre contemporaries. Less good shows coming out also means less new anime fans coming in, and more older fans getting frustrated and abandoning the medium, leaving the Western anime industry in a state of decline. If things continue on the way that they're going, the industry will likely fulfill this self-defeating prophecy. But luckily, this is more than likely part of a cycle that will force the industry to go back to focusing on creating quality shows to get people to tune in so that they can once again make money. Once this happens, there will slowly start to be a resurgence in the West, and once anime makes a comeback, assuming there is a resurgence, the cycle repeats, at least until someone finds a solution to the problem. Now, I've heard arguments promoting temporarily boycotting paid subscription services like Crunchyroll and turning to free streaming sites until the subscription sites can provide something worth paying for, as well as arguments for studios having a way to donate directly to them. But I personally don't believe that either of these are optimal ways to solve the issue. I think that abandoning paid subscription services will simply lead to studios and corporations believing that there is a lack of interest in the West, which would result in them redirecting their attention to other markets where there is monetary interest. This makes the decision to boycott sites like Crunchyroll for piracy websites somewhat counterintuitive to the end goal. I also don't think that anime should be treated as a charity case that needs donations to get by. Anime is a booming industry that provides products that tons of people are interested in and pour money into regularly, and yet the people who make these shows are barely getting by. Meanwhile, you have Crunchyroll, who's making enough money to throw conventions and fly people out from all around the globe to talk about anime and hang out. But just because I don't think that those propositions will work for the industry in the long run, doesn't mean that I'm some street-walking doomsayer looking to scare you into feeling shitty about the current and future state of the anime industry. Instead, I'd like to propose my own solution to the problem. Imagine a world where your favorite anime was available on its studio's own website for $1 per show. That allows you to fund the individual anime that you care about, without having to buy a repeating subscription. 100% of the money would go directly to that studio. The shitty shows would over time almost certainly lose money, and it would no longer be beneficial for studios to make trash that no one wants to see. In addition to that, they could also make the first 3 episodes free. That not only allows the consumer to do the 3-episode test in order to decide whether or not they want to spend their money on the given show, but it also combats illegal streaming sites by making it more convenient to simply continue watching the show on the same site, while getting the added benefit of knowing that you're directly helping the industry with your payment. Now, I have no doubts in my mind that piracy will still be prevalent, but I think that this practice would at least reduce the pervasiveness of sites like Kiss Anime, which would lose some appeal, especially when the legitimate sites are providing an affordable $1 or even $2 per show price tag. Payment methods could also be made easier by giving the option to pay with Bitcoin or other cryptocurrencies like Litecoin, Ethereum, Ripple, or the Japan-centric Monacoin, all of which allow you to quickly complete transactions by simply scanning a QR code with your phone, significantly reducing the likelihood of compromising your credit card information online. Not to mention that they carry much lower fees than the traditional payment methods like Visa, MasterCard, or PayPal, which would also obviously be present to allow for additional options for consumers. But I digress. In addition to the $1 or $2 per show method of payment, studios could also implement a season's pass for, how about $6.95, so that you can watch all the shows that a given studio has to offer within that seasonal period. Business strategies like this would help to promote healthy competition between studios, putting them in a position where they must regularly produce high-quality shows that people are willing to pay for, or risk losing their audience to studios that are putting out better work. But as great as the utopian future in which studios have their own websites appears to be, ultimately, that's not the world in which we currently live. At the end of the day, it's up to the studios that make anime to take the first step. Because you can't help them if they aren't willing to help themselves. And if they're making more money off of TV Tokyo broadcasting their shows in Japan than they are off the Western audiences, then it may be in their best interest to allow good old Crunchyroll Incorporated to continue marring the quality and reputation of anime. So no matter how you slice it, Crunchyroll is currently bad for anime, even though it once started off as a simple company with good intentions and has done a lot to bring recognition to the Western anime audiences. In its current state, however, it doesn't really bring anything special to the table. There was a time where anime wasn't widely appreciated in the West, but that time has passed. Anime is a booming industry, and it brings in tons of money, and I think it's about time that the studios sacked up and started providing people with a service that they actually want. A way to watch and fund the anime that they care about in a way that benefits everyone involved. Speaking of funding the things that you care about, if you enjoy the content that I create, then it may be worth your while to check out my new Patreon. It will be used as a way for you to purchase additional content, perks, and will also serve as a way for you to help me to increase the quality, consistency, and frequency of my content. And if you go there now, you'll get access to one free video that is representative of the $1 reward tier. Also, on one final note, I want to address the attempt made by Digibro to remove my previous video entitled The Digibro Exposé: Why the PCP Fails at Business. Digibro incited his fans to enact a false flagging campaign by reporting the video for, quote, harassment. In the video, I did make harsh criticisms towards Digi and the people he creates content with, and I can see why he would be upset by the video. But it certainly was not harassment and does not deserve to be taken down. He never once attempted to contact me about his issues regarding the content of my video, but instead told his fans to report the video. In the instance that he or anyone else succeeds in taking down my videos or my channel, I suggest you follow me on Twitter or join my Discord server to stay up to date on the status of my content and the platforms that I use. I believe strongly in freedom of speech and freedom of expression, and I will not allow censorship to stop me from creating the content that I want to create.